need to tell you about the worst feeling in personal finance. It is not being broke. Being broke has a strange kind of honesty to it. You know exactly where you stand. The number is small, but at least it is clear. The worst feeling is doing everything right and still feeling like you are losing. You are putting money into your 401k. You are paying your credit card in full. You are driving an old used car you could have replaced years ago, but did not, because you understand the math. You are packing lunch 3 days a week while your coworker orders $42 worth of DoorDash without thinking twice. You are doing all the responsible things, the boring things, the things nobody posts on Instagram, because a screenshot of a 401k contribution is not exactly exciting content. And yet when you open your banking app, you do not feel rich. You do not even feel stable. You see a checking account that still makes you nervous near the end of every month. You see a savings balance that feels painfully small compared with what the internet says you should already have by now. You see friends who seem to have more money, spend more money, and live bigger than you while you are sitting at home eating leftover chicken and rice wondering if this is actually leading anywhere, or if you have been sold a lie. I lived in that feeling for years. That exact awful space between doing the right thing and seeing the results of the right thing. I called it the financial fog. You cannot see far enough ahead to know whether the path you are on actually goes anywhere worthwhile. Everything feels gray. Every benchmark feels impossibly far away. You compare yourself to people who are either further along than you or simply faking it, and in the moment, you genuinely cannot tell which one it is. But here is what I know now that I did not know then. The fog is normal. The fog is actually the sign. That feeling of, I am doing this but nothing is happening, is exactly what the early stages of wealth building feel like. It is supposed to be slow. It is supposed to feel invisible. Wealth is built exactly where it is hardest to see it, underneath the surface of everyday life, in accounts you do not check often enough, through a compounding curve that barely moves for years before it suddenly turns vertical in a way that will shock you. This video is about the 9 signs that you are building real wealth, even when your brain keeps telling you that you are not. Some of these signs will feel familiar right away and give you relief. Others may completely change the way you look at your financial life and permanently alter your relationship with money. Let's get into it. You have money automatically leaving your paycheck before you see it. This is probably the most reliable wealth-building behavior in America, and it is so boring that most people never notice it working. If you have a 401k contribution coming out of your paycheck every 2 weeks, or an automatic transfer hitting your Roth IRA or brokerage account the day after payday, then you are doing the same thing that 94% of millionaires did to build wealth, according to the Ramsey Solutions National Study of Millionaires. You are paying your future self first. The Vanguard 2025 How America Saves report found that the average 401k contribution rate reached 7.7% in 2024. And Fidelity's Q3 2025 data showed the average total savings rate, including employer matches, reaching 14.2%. If you are anywhere near that range, you are already ahead of most working Americans. If you are above 10%, you are in a genuinely strong position, even if your account balance does not look impressive yet. Here is where your brain gets this wrong. It stares at the balance. You look at your 401k and see $41,000, and your brain compares it to $1 million and immediately calls the whole thing a failure. But your brain is ignoring the behavior. The automatic contribution is the engine. The balance is just the odometer reading today. The engine is what matters, because the engine is what takes you somewhere. A person putting 12% of a $70,000 salary into investments is contributing about $8,400 a year. At 8% returns over 25 years, that annual contribution alone can grow to roughly $632,000. The $41,000 you see now is the seed. The $632,000 is the tree. You are looking at the seed and judging it because it does not look like a tree yet. That is not failure. That is how growth works. My friend Andre checks his 401k once every few months. He has about $78,000 at 32, and every time he looks at it, he feels behind. He compares himself to people online posting six-figure portfolio screenshots at 28. What Andre does not factor in is that he has been contributing since 24. His employer matches 4%. And at his current pace, he will cross $1 million before 55 without increasing his contribution by a single dollar. The person posting a six-figure portfolio at 28 probably got family money, sold a company, or is lying. Andre is building real generational wealth on a $73,000 salary and lunches he packs 4 days a week. He just cannot fully see it yet because the curve is still flat. And it will not stay flat forever. You pay your credit card in full every month. If you do this, you belong to a financial minority that is quietly separating itself from the rest of the country. Nearly half of all credit card holders carry a revolving balance from month to month. Among millennials and Gen X, that number rises to 53%. Total U.S. credit card debt crossed $1.28 trillion at the end of 2025, according to the New York Federal Reserve. The average balance is around $6,500 at 22.4% APR. When you pay your card in full, you are not just avoiding interest. You are avoiding the slow compounding damage that interest creates over time. A $6,500 balance at 22% APR, if only minimum payments are made, can cost more than $9,000 in interest over 18 years. If that same $9,000 were invested at 8%, it could have grown to roughly $32,000. The real wealth gap between carrying a balance and paying it off in full on just one credit card can exceed $40,000 over a couple decades. You probably do not feel rich because paying the balance in full just feels normal. It feels like the minimum acceptable behavior. It is not. It is a behavior that separates you from roughly half the country. It means the compounding machine of the credit card industry is not working against you. Every month, money that would have gone to Visa or MasterCard in interest stays in your own financial ecosystem instead. You are not paying someone else for the privilege of using your own money. That sounds simple. Half of American cardholders cannot say the same. You know exactly how much you spend every month. This one sounds small until you realize how uncommon it actually is. According to YouGov, 47% of Americans went into 2026 without any budget at all. And among the people who do budget, the most common reason is not wealth building or investing. It is simply trying to make sure the essentials are covered, just surviving the month. If you track your spending even loosely, even imperfectly, even with a simple spreadsheet you update on Sunday night while watching television, you are practicing the behavior that behavioral finance research consistently points to as one of the strongest predictors of financial improvement. People who track spending save 15% to 20% more than people who do not. Tracking creates awareness. Awareness creates friction. Friction slows unconscious spending. The average American underestimates subscription costs by $133 a month. The average impulse spending totals about $282 a month. If you know your numbers, you have closed those awareness gaps. The money that other people lose to invisible spending stays in your account because you can actually see it. You may feel broke partly because tracking makes spending visible in a way that non-trackers never experience. They spend $300 on impulse purchases and do not feel it because they never look. You spend $80 on impulse purchases and feel every one of them because your spreadsheet puts it in black and white. The awareness that makes you feel anxious is the same awareness that is building your wealth. The discomfort is part of the mechanism. It is working. You drive a car you could have upgraded, but chose not to. This is one of the clearest signals of wealth-building behavior in the data. The median price paid by millionaires for their most recent vehicle was $31,367, according to Thomas Stanley's National Millionaire Survey. Experian found that 61% of households earning over $250,000 drive Hondas, Toyotas, and Fords. Only 23.5% of millionaires owned a car from the current model year. Meanwhile, the average new car payment in America reached $767 a month at the end of 2025. Many Americans are carrying payments above $1,000 on 84-month loans for cars that lose 20% of their value in the first year. If you are driving a 2019 Civic while your coworker rolls into the parking lot in a leased BMW, your brain makes a quick status comparison that makes you feel like the loser. What it is not calculating is the $400 to $600 monthly difference between your payment and theirs, invested at 8% over the next 25 years. That difference can be worth somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000, depending on the spread. Your coworker is performing wealth. You are building it. The parking lot is lying to you. Your brokerage account is telling the truth. I drove a 2017 Honda Civic for 6 years. Every single month during those 6 years, someone in my life upgraded their car, and I felt that little flicker of doubt. Am I being too cheap? Am I punishing myself? Should I just get the nicer car? Then I would check my investment account, watch the number rise by another few thousand, and remember why I was doing it. The Civic got me to work, to the grocery store, to my friend's house. It did everything a $48,000 car would have done, but for less than half the cost. The difference between those two prices lives in my portfolio now. It is working for me every day, generating returns I will use for decades. The BMW would be worth around $12,000 by now. You have an emergency fund, even if it is small. If you have even $1,000 set aside for unexpected expenses, you are in a stronger financial position than roughly a quarter of the American population. 24% of Americans have zero emergency savings going into 2026. The median emergency fund balance nationwide is only around $600, according to Empower. $600. That is one car repair away from a credit card spiral. Federal Reserve survey data has consistently shown that about 37% of Americans could not cover a $400 emergency without borrowing or selling something. If your emergency fund has more than $400 in it, you have more financial resilience than more than a third of the country. If it has more than $2,000, you are in a materially different position than most Americans your age. You may not feel wealthy because an emergency fund does not do anything visible. It just sits there. It does not grow fast, especially in a high-yield savings account earning about 4%. It does not give you dopamine the way a new purchase does. It does not impress anyone at dinner. Your brain wants to call it stagnant money, money that is not doing anything. But that is not what it is doing. It is preventing disaster. It is preventing a $400 car repair from becoming a $4,000 credit card balance at 22%. It is preventing the cycle that traps millions of Americans in debt every year. The emergency fund is not designed to grow. It is designed to protect everything else that is growing. It is a wall. You do not notice the wall until the flood comes. And then it is everything. You have said no to something you could technically afford. This is one of the clearest behavioral signs of wealth building, and it is the one that feels the most backwards. You saw the trip to Europe. You could have charged it. You had the credit. Your friends were going. You said no. Not because you could not pay for it, but because paying for it would have compromised something more important: your investment contributions, your emergency fund, or your debt payoff timeline. That no is wealth in formation. The Ramsey Solutions Millionaire Study found that 94% of millionaires consistently lived below their means. Living below your means is not about earning a lot. It is about spending less than you could. It is about creating a gap between what your income allows and what your lifestyle consumes. Every no widens the gap. Every dollar in that gap gets invested. Every invested dollar compounds. The no does not feel like a wealth-building move in the moment. It feels like deprivation. It feels like missing out. It feels like standing on the sidelines while everyone else is actually living. But here is what the data says about the people on the sidelines. The median net worth for Americans ages 35 to 44 is $135,600. The 75th percentile is $488,400. The gap between those two numbers is $352,800. And that gap is driven mostly by savings rate, not income. The people in the 75th percentile said no more often. They packed their lunches. They drove the older car. They skipped the trip. They protected the gap. And $352,800 of compounded discipline is the measurable difference between those groups. My coworker Priya turned down a $2,600 girls' trip to Chelum last year. She felt terrible about it for weeks. Her friends posted photos for 7 straight days, and every one of them felt like a direct attack on her decision. Then Priya looked at her Roth IRA balance, which had crossed $45,000, and did the math. That $2,600 invested for 20 more years at 8% would become about $12,100. She did not skip a trip. She bought $12,000 of future wealth. The photos from Chelum will fade. The compounding will not. Your net worth has gone up over the past 12 months. This is the metric that cuts through almost all the noise, and most people never check it. Net worth is everything you own minus everything you owe. Your checking account, savings, investments, retirement accounts, and the market value of any property, minus your mortgage, car loan, student loans, credit cards, and any other debt. According to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, the median net worth for Americans under 35 is $39,000. For ages 35 to 44, it is $135,600. For ages 45 to 54, it is $247,200. For ages 55 to 64, it is $364,500. These are medians. Half of people in each group are below those numbers. If your net worth is anywhere near or above the median for your age, you are doing better than half the country. If it has gone up over the past year, even by $2,000 or $5,000, the trajectory is positive. You are accumulating. The direction matters more than the raw number. I calculated my net worth at 29 and it was negative $11,400. It was terrifying, but I checked 6 months later and it was negative $7,200. $6 months after that, negative $2,100. Then positive $4,800. Then positive $12,000. The number itself was small for a long time. The direction was relentless. Every time I checked, the arrow was pointing up. That arrow is what wealth looks like before it looks like wealth. It is what the early part of the compounding curve feels like from the inside. Boring, slow, almost invisible, and absolutely unstoppable if you do not give up. The average net worth for all Americans is about $1,063,700 according to Federal Reserve data, but the median is only $192,084. That giant difference exists because extreme wealth at the top pulls the average up dramatically. Do not compare yourself to the average. Compare yourself to the median. Compare yourself to yourself from 12 months ago. If the number went up, you are building. You have increased your income or your savings rate over the last 2 years. That does not mean you got a giant raise or doubled your contributions overnight. It means something changed. Maybe you negotiated your salary up by $3,000. Maybe you increased your 401k from 6% to 8%. Maybe you learned a skill that made you more valuable. Maybe you cut $200 a month in spending and redirected it to your Roth. Movement is the sign. Wealth is not built by a single dramatic event. It is built through what the Japanese call kaizen, small, continuous improvement. 1% changes repeated over time create outcomes so large they look impossible from the starting line. Fidelity reported that 45% of 401k participants increased their contribution rate in 2024. If you were one of them, even by just 1 percentage point, you made a decision that will compound for the rest of your career. Here is what that tiny 1% increase actually means. If you earn $70,000 and raise your 401k contribution from 6% to 7%, that is only $700 more per year. $700. You will barely feel that in your paycheck. But over 25 years at 8% returns, that 1% increase can produce about $52,000 in extra retirement savings. From a change so small your checking account hardly notices it. If you do that every year for 5 years, going from 6% to 11%, the extra retirement wealth from those small increases alone can approach $300,000. That is the part the fog hides from you. A 1% increase does not feel like a big wealth move. It feels like a rounding error. But compounding does not care how something feels. It cares what it does over time. And a 1% annual increase does something remarkable over time. It builds the gap. It widens the distance between what you earn and what you spend. It feeds the engine. Every year the engine gets a little more fuel. Every year the curve gets a little steeper. You cannot see how steep it is yet because you are standing on the flat part. The flat part is where most people quit. The steep part is where the wealth lives. You do not panic when an unexpected bill hits. This is less about the actual amount in your emergency fund and more about the emotional reaction it creates. When your car needs a $600 repair, do you feel annoyed or do you feel panicked? Annoyed means you have margin. Panicked means you do not. Margin is wealth in its earliest form. It is the space between your income and your obligations that allows normal life to happen without becoming financial chaos. About 24% of Americans have zero margin. About 46% cannot cover 3 months of basic expenses, according to Bankrate. If an unexpected bill shows up and your response is frustration instead of fear, you have something nearly half the country does not. You have stability. Stability does not feel like wealth. It feels like nothing. That is exactly why most people do not value it until it disappears. Ask anyone who lived without it. Ask anyone who spent a Tuesday night on the bathroom floor with a calculator app open, trying to figure out if they can afford to fix the car. Ask them what stability is worth. They will tell you it is worth everything. Stability is the foundation every other wealth-building habit stands on. You cannot invest consistently if a broken dishwasher sends you into credit card debt. You cannot maintain a savings rate if every surprise expense resets you to zero. You cannot think long-term if every short-term interruption becomes a financial crisis. The person who handles a $600 repair with a sigh and a transfer from savings is a person whose wealth-building machine keeps running without interruption. That continuity, that unbroken chain of contributions and compounding, is what creates results that feel impossible from the flat part of the curve. Here is what I need you to understand about all 9 of these signs together. Individually, they seem small. Collectively, they are huge. The median net worth for Americans ages 55 to 64 is $364,500. That is the midpoint. Half have less. A lot of those people earned 6-figure incomes for decades. A lot of them looked wealthier than you do right now. A lot of them had better cars, better apartments, better wardrobes, better vacations. They looked like they were winning. They were performing. If you are doing the 9 things on this list, even imperfectly, even inconsistently, even with balances that feel embarrassingly small, you are quietly setting yourself up to end up well above that median. Because the median is created by people who do not automate their investing, who carry credit card balances, who never track their spending, who finance depreciating cars, who have no emergency fund, who cannot say no to a vacation they cannot really afford, who never check their net worth, who never raise their savings rate, and who panic every time an unexpected bill shows up. That is what creates $135,600 of net worth at 40. That is what creates the retirement crisis numbers I have talked about in other videos. You are doing the opposite. The fog tells you you are losing. The data tells you you are compounding. The fog is a feeling. The data is math. Trust the math. This is not financial advice, but I want to be direct with you about something. That feeling of being behind, that financial fog I described at the start, does not disappear by itself. It fades when you understand money well enough to see through it. When you truly understand compound interest, you stop panicking about a $41,401 balance at 32, because you can see the $1 million it could become by 55. When you understand opportunity cost, you stop feeling deprived about driving a used car because you can see the $700,000 that gap can create. When you understand the connection between savings rate and retirement timeline, you stop comparing yourself to people who are performing wealth, because you realize that performance and accumulation are opposite behaviors. That understanding has a name: financial literacy. It is the thing that clears the fog. It is the thing that makes every sign on this list make sense, not as isolated habits you do because someone told you to, but as one coherent system building something real underneath your daily life. Without financial literacy, you are doing the right things without understanding why they matter, and the fog hangs around because you cannot connect today's behavior to tomorrow's outcome. With it, the fog burns off. You can see the curve, you can see where you are on it, you can see where it is going. And once you can see the curve, something changes permanently. You stop needing motivation. You stop needing reassurance. You stop comparing yourself to the nicest BMW in the parking lot. You just keep doing the boring things. Every month, every paycheck, every no to a purchase that would have felt good for one day and cost you $10,000 over a decade. You keep doing them because now you can see what they are building. The fog is lifting already. The fact that you watched this far, the fact that you recognized yourself in 3, 4, or 7 of these signs means the fog is already thinner than it was before. That is how it starts. Not with a dramatic breakthrough, not with a 6-figure windfall, with the slow realization that you have been building something all along. You have been. The signs are there. The math is on your side. The curve bends for everyone who stays on it long enough. And here is the part that matters most going forward. The signs I talked about today are universal. They apply no matter your age. But the specific traps that threaten those signs, the specific mistakes that knock people off the curve, are different at every stage of life. The spending patterns that derail a 26-year-old are completely different from the ones that derail a 44-year-old or a 57-year-old. Every decade has its own financial landmines, its own version of the mistake that feels reasonable in the moment and costs you massively over time. Knowing what those traps look like before you reach them is the difference between staying on the curve and getting thrown off right before it bends. You are building wealth. The fog says otherwise. You are building wealth. The fog says otherwise.